All right, and for more on this, we're now being joined by Professor James A. Russell. He is Associate Professor in the Department of National Security Affairs at NPS. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, sir, given the recent developments, will the IEDs be more widely used going forward in the ongoing hostilities?
I'm sorry, will what be more widely used?
Sir, the improvised explosive devices that were in the pagers.
Yes. Right. Well, this is a form of warfare that the world has regrettably seen over the last, couple of decades. Really it's another version of course, what the United States saw when it entered Iraq and Afghanistan. And of course, regrettably, it became the weapon of choice used against U.S. forces, obviously applied against vehicles. This is somewhat different, of course, but yes, these kinds of weapons have been around for a long time, and they were just deployed in a different kind of way by the apparently by the Israelis. According to reports in the New York Times, it was the Israelis who implanted these explosives in pagers ordered by Hezbollah from Taiwan.
Professor, pagers were essentially used over 20 years ago. It was in the late 90s, early 2000s even. That's essentially when people were most actively using pagers. In today's day and age, to track a shipment of pagers coming into any kind of to any country, and essentially they do come from Taiwan still, it's very easy to track that, okay, these number of pagers are being sent out. And of course, Lebanon being Israel's immediate neighbor, allegedly, Lebanon, they've been claiming that Israel is behind these blasts, but it would not be difficult to track where they are being used. There are many theories regarding how these detonations took place simultaneously. Anything that comes to your mind on how it actually took place?
Well, Israel is in the forefront of cyber warfare kinds of technologies and applications. And of course, this is simply another version of what, again, the United States encounters in Iraq and Afghanistan, in which the insurgents over the course of the wars sort of evolved into increasingly sophisticated ways of detonating the improvised explosive devices. Until it migrated from pressure plates to various things until it was just remote detonation. So this is an example of that, in which the Israelis got inside, apparently, I don't have any direct knowledge of this, but apparently they got into the sort of electronics of how the pagers communicate and hacked into it and were able to program the detonations using this means. So, it's just, again, another example of the weapons that have evolved in this era. And of course, not so interestingly for Hezbollah, of course, is that they were forced into using these pagers, of course, because cell phones,
yes,
they're an open book, basically, for powers that are observing / listening to. In the American wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, cell phones were the number one, sort of device that Americans were able to track for the purposes of conducting targeted assassinations, roundups of insurgent networks.
Yes,
and of course,
it's interesting
the
that
Israelis
they were forced to not use cell phones, and then they resorted to pagers. And this seems to be in the making, or this seems to have been the plan since many months. Ever since they would have placed the order, it would have come into their hands, it would have been in regular use, and then finally, yesterday became the day when they finally detonated.
Absolutely. And Professor, I also want to understand the United States has said that it was not aware in advance of it and had no involvement in these mass pager explosions. Now, given how important American support has been for Israel, it's essentially a lifeline. What do you make of the United States' response to this?
Well, I think you have to, this is yet another example, of Israel ignoring American interests and American suggestions. You have to remember that the American envoy was in Israel yesterday, asking the Israelis, of course, or requesting the Israelis do what not escalate in Lebanon. So the day after the envoy leaves, what do the Israelis do? They escalate in Lebanon. And so this is, again, just another example of Israel off on its own. It's telling the United States about what it's doing after the fact, presenting us as its main benefactor, with a fait accompli, in effect, all seeking to push the region towards a wider regional war that we in the United States would or could become involved in. This is a long-running objective of the Likud and of Bibi Netanyahu. So this is just another dangerous escalation by the Israelis that do any of us or do any of your viewers watching this think that this attack is going to somehow short circuit or reduce tensions? Of course not. It's designed to continue heighten tensions. And the concluding thought that I would offer to this from the Israelis on the Israelis is they should be careful what they wish for. I mean, here they are attacking, civilians and other people in other countries, government officials in other countries. Can any of us think about what the Israeli reaction would be if a bunch of Israelis were suddenly killed by mysterious explosions in their cell phones? The Israelis would go crazy, right? So in other words, they should be careful about all this stuff. They think they're, sort of superior, and that, if this kind of thing can't happen to them, well, maybe they're underestimating their adversaries. There are lots of countries out there that have always underestimated their adversaries, including the United States.
You get your point.
They should be careful with what they wish for.
Underestimating, and of course, this definitely does not reduce tensions in any measure. And the U.S. has been carrying out rounds after rounds of diplomatic talks to get the two sides to arrive at some kind of a ceasefire. Of course, that doesn't seem to be anywhere close after the recent developments again. Thank you so much for joining in, sir. That was Professor James A. Russell. Always a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you.